Do you know that 73% of customers agree that a bad restroom experience in a restaurant will impact their willingness to return? Torque Sustainable Hygiene Solutions improve operational efficiency for a better guest experience and better business.
Welcome to today's episode, recorded live from the National Restaurant Association show. I'm Leigh Zinsmeister. I am joined today by Amie Kromis, the Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Essity, which is a global leader in hygiene and health. Essity's products, solutions, and services are used by 1 billion people every day, all in support of their mission to break barriers to well-being for consumers, patients, caregivers, and communities around the world. Essity is the parent company to the Torque brand, which is the global leader in professional hygiene, which helps restaurants leverage better hygiene for better business performance and guest experience. Amie, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Tell me about yourself and tell me about Torque.
Yes. So first, this is my first NRA, and the energy is amazing all around us. It's been great to experience. But I've been a leader in the DEI space for over 15 years across different sectors and industries. And for me, it really brings me joy when DEI comes to life through brands and business. And so it's been awesome to partner and collaborate with Torque, which, as you mentioned, global leader in professional hygiene. So things that you may take for granted, but if we took them away, you would certainly notice. So soaps, paper towels, also toilet tissue as well, everything from office buildings to maybe some of your favorite entertainment venues to healthcare facilities. And we're able to do that with customers in over 110 different countries. So it's been a great way to partner with them, and from a DEI perspective as well.
You just gave a presentation here at the show. I was there. It was great. Share with our audience here some of the highlights from that presentation and what you shared.
Yes. Well, one, thank you for attending. It was great to see just the energy in the room, and also to lead it with my colleague, Dottie Hayes. We did it. It was just amazing to be on stage together and have it flow so well. But our presentation title was Stop Flushing Your Guest Experience Down the Drain, which may seem a little provocative, but it was rooted in this research that we did around 6,000 plus individuals that we surveyed to understand what is often the busiest room in a building, which is the restroom. And one, we uncovered that, hey, this space has a lot of meaning, but also secondly, a lot of the meaning that it has is anxiety inducing. So specifically 44% of respondents said that they have anxiety around using public restrooms, specifically for barriers that they experience using public restrooms. So those can be well-known barriers, such as, is the space clean at the end of the day, right? That's a well-known and obvious barrier, but there's also some lesser-known barriers that, in order to understand those barriers, it's helpful to understand audiences. And so that's really at the heart of this, is when you understand your audience better, you can also serve your audience better. So some examples that we found and some insights that we found from the research was, for instance, 15 to 20% of the U.S. population is neurodivergent. And we found that hot air dryers can be extremely challenging for individuals who have autism and who are on the spectrum, particularly because of the sensory overload, right? Because of the decibels that exceed a certain threshold, and it can be very, very challenging. So that, for me, was one of the most eye-opening barriers, because it's not my experience, right? And so oftentimes when we're sharing this information, a parent will typically come up to me afterwards and say, we thought it was just us, right? But this is something that you all are bringing attention to, that, I didn't connect it with these different pieces. So that's one lesser known barrier, but also to skin sensitivity. So 30 million Americans have eczema. And when you think about harsh, fragrant soaps, those can be irritating, dry, cracked skin, and that can impact not only the guest experience. I have eczema, and I hate leaving the restroom with dry, cracked skin, especially if I don't have a lotion somewhere with me when I return to the table. But also, to my colleague, Dottie Hayes, she provided the perspective of having worked in food service. And she said, from a food safety perspective, right, if I'm having to wash my hands again and again and again and again every hour, However, that also impacts my experience in terms of food safety, in terms of, do I make time for this, which we want food service workers to absolutely wash their hands. So these are some of the things where we try to reframe a space that is often seen as an afterthought into, no, it can actually be a way that can drive and change business revenue and reputation. It can also really differentiate the user experience and the guest experience, and it can also reduce barriers to hygiene as well.
Torque also has a lounge here at your booth. I know it has different activations and offerings. Tell me about it.
Yes, so we have this wellness and sustainability lounge where we are doing a few things, right, to make it interactive, but also making a meaningful kind of hands-on experience. First, we are showing out our paper towel plea, which is, as I just spoke about, the different barriers that are in restrooms. We didn't just want to point it out and say, okay, here's the barrier, someone figure it out. We actually took the initiative and we launched public inclusive hygiene in public restrooms, and we did it through the paper towel plea, which is we wanted to understand these stories. What's the stories behind these barriers? And we had those individuals write their stories out, actually on paper towels here that we have. And it was very insightful for us, right? Because we put these dispensers in the restroom right where the challenge happens. So that way people pick them up and they go, okay, I never thought about this before, but maybe I should be thinking about it. And so we have an element of the paper towel plea at our booth, so that way people can provide their own pleas around inclusive hygiene in public restrooms to expand the conversation about what we're talking about. And then we're also diving into good compression versus bad compression. This is my first NRA, but there's already been a lot of walking. So example of bad compression, good compression, when we think about being able to, one, we're offering massages, and no one's ever going to say no to that. But there's also, two, a link with our products in terms of how much is compressed, so that way you can reduce refills as well. So a lot of good things going on at the lounge, and it's been good to experience.
Yeah. You mentioned the phrase inclusive hygiene a couple times. Can you tell me more about that and the commitment that Torque is making about surrounding inclusive hygiene?
Definitely. So it's something where, one, we're new on this journey and we realize that we can't do it alone, right? We realized that we picked up on some of this research that was then backed by real life lived experiences from individuals, and we're digging into it, right? So actually earlier this year in 2025, we launched a coalition of experts from academia, from healthcare, from advocacy, to really help us explore how can we help really reduce barriers for hygiene in public restrooms, since there is so much anxiety around it, since there are so many barriers around it. We realize that products are one element of it. There's also design around it. There's also all these other moving parts that it's been really helpful to for us to learn from that coalition, and also for us to help drive awareness and ultimately some change.
Can you talk to me a little bit about how restroom hygiene affects guest and employee experience in the restaurant industry?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, with the 6,000 people that we surveyed, we saw that more than 1 in 3 Americans face these barriers around hand hygiene, not only in public restrooms, but it affects the guest experience around that anxiety piece. But it also, too, affects the employee experience as well. So I'll take, for instance, skin sensitivities. And you might see it from the guest experience of if you have harsh or fragrant soaps, how that can be irritating for your skin, but also thinking about it from a food safety perspective. If you have an employee who has eczema and the soaps are very irritating, it's going to be difficult and perhaps painful at some times to continuously wash your hands over and over and over again. And so how can you make something that is should be a simple process, also a necessary process, make it a little bit more comfortable for someone, right? By really understanding what they're going through.
Sure. Yeah. What about for an employee in the restaurant?
Yeah. I would say from the employee standpoint, one, the eczema piece I think is a great example, but also, two, we see when you have products and dispensers and such that can handle more capacity. You don't have to go and continuously refill, because what we realize as well is food service workers are doing double duty often, right? You're working in front of house, but you're also having to refill the bathroom and make sure that someone doesn't go in there and get absolutely disgusted and share something on social media around how the bathroom looks, because then that also might make an association with, if the bathroom looks like this, how does the kitchen look, right? What's going through with my food, and how is it being prepared? So trying to stop that association is also one piece that we found is helpful for the employee experience as well.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that Torque has data showing that the restroom experience is directly related to a customer's willingness to return to that restaurant. How can businesses address that challenge?
Definitely. Well, number one, back to the basics. I mean, offer clean facilities, right? At the end of the day, we want to make sure that is an obvious, well-known barrier to hygiene, particularly in public restrooms, but also as well thinking about what type of soaps that you offer, right? Making sure that they're mild, that they're fragrance-free, or that they're dermatologically tested. And I want to also add a caveat for all of these. These are already product assortments that people are buying. It's the question of how can you make some simple adjustments so that way you're reducing barriers for folks who are experiencing your restroom and ultimately part of that larger dining experience as well. But also too, thinking about installing high capacity dispensers as well, and thinking about hot air dryers as well. We know that hot air dryers not only spread more bacteria, so from an OCD contamination standpoint, but also as well the decibel ratings on hot air dryers often exceed the CDC recommended sound protection. And so whenever we share these stories, particularly the ones around those who are on the autism spectrum, that was the most eye-opening for me, because I never made the association between hot air dryers and how they can be particularly challenging because of the sensory overload for people on the autism spectrum. And so whenever I share that story, particularly, typically I always have a parent come up afterwards and say, okay, we thought it was just us, but okay, good to know that we're not alone. And thank you all for even bringing attention and awareness to this. So those are some of the things that restaurants can think about around simple changes that can really make a big impact from the guest experience.
That makes sense. I'm always getting notifications on my watch that it's too loud when I'm just using the hairdryer, because it tells you if you're in like a loud environment, if you should put like earplugs in if you're at a concert or something, but it's sometimes like it's too loud, and it's just because I was drying my hands.
Exactly. And when it's one, thank you for sharing that with me, because I've never heard that before, and I'm absolutely going to reference it.
Interesting. Well, now you know.
I unfortunately don't.
Yeah, I noticed you weren't wearing one, so I didn't know if you would even realize. But yeah.
But it's helpful too, because the CDC, with the recommendations that they have, is if something exceeds a certain decibel amount, then they recommend ear protection.
Yeah.
So to your point around, like, if you're at a concert or thinking about even like a baby, how they might have ear protection as well. So that's the one. The skin sensitivities for me was easy, because it's like, hey, I have this lived experience, this makes sense, I have eczema. The hot air dryers in that for me was extremely eye-opening. So it's good to know that, hey, there are things that if we understand different audiences better, we can also help support those audiences better. That's at the end of the story, right? Knowing your audience and how can you maximize that audience.
Absolutely. Sustainability is a really hot topic right now in the industry, in a lot of industries. How is Torque committing to sustainability in the hygiene space for restaurants?
Definitely. I mean, we're committed to developing innovative sustainability hygiene solutions that are not only better for business, but also for people and the planet. And it's something that we've committed to and is at the core of our operations, right? We realize that many of our products are single-use products. And so that's something that we need to be considerate of. And how are we being a good steward to the environment with the massive impact that we have as well? And so we realize that it's also too part of the experience when we think about the waste that can be produced from products, and going back to the association that can be made of if you have an unclean restroom with maybe paper towels everywhere, what association that makes for back of house. And we want to make sure that that doesn't really take place at the end of the day. And so we recognize that our products play a role in that experience.
Yeah. What kind of products?
Yes. So specifically the Torque Express Nap Fit, which it dispenses one napkin at a time. It can reduce waste by 47%. That's a great one right there. And then also too, our packaging, right? So thinking about how 90% of our packaging is made from renewable resources, such as paper or cardboard. And also too, by 2025, we'll use 30% of recycled content in plastic packaging, and 100% of our plastic packaging will be recyclable, right? So many of our products already meet these commitments, but we have our targets related to environmental sustainability that we're going to continue and that we really are focused on.
We're seeing a rise in consumers favoring businesses that prioritize sustainability practices. What advice do you have for restaurant owners who want to update their hygiene products to reduce waste?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely understand that there is a tension between sourcing products that help reduce waste without increasing costs. And that decision can have consequences for a restaurant, right? With many selections being determined based off of whether a product is effective, whether it's sustainable, but also too, whether it's not overly expensive. So balancing all those factors, one, we recognize it's not easy, right? But we also notice that it can be challenging for restaurants to reduce waste for several reasons, right? Some cleaning products just don't offer refills. Also, too, dispensers that allow customers to pull multiple napkins at once is also challenging as well from a cost perspective, and how that can add up over time, over a day even. And then also, too, when we think about hand sanitizers and soaps that constantly drip, thinking about how you might have a leaky faucet at home and then you get your bill and you're like, whoa, I didn't realize that has such a massive impact over time, right? These are all things that impact the cost, and also that tension between cost and effectiveness and also sustainability. But there's room for improvement in cleaning products, right? With 75% of restaurant staff agreeing that hygiene products such as kitchen wipes and napkins produce too much waste. But it's also worth remembering that smaller incremental changes can make a difference, right? So for example, select wipes made from recycled materials, use controlled dispensers, and purchase products made from sustainably sourced materials as well. So although there's a challenge there, there's also an opportunity that can be met.
Thanks for joining me today, Amie.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into today's episode. It is clear that the restroom experience plays a powerful role in customer satisfaction and loyalty, especially in restaurants. If you want to learn more about Torque, the brand's offerings, and inclusive hygiene, you can visit torqueusa.com.
Do you know that 73% of customers agree that a bad restroom experience in a restaurant will impact their willingness to return? Torque sustainable hygiene solutions improve operational efficiency for a better guest experience and better business.